Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. You will notice there's a different view today, and let me know. I changed the camera angle, hoping to give you a better idea of what my desk looks like, and I feel like this way you're closer to the area that I will be creating in. So I have got my Summer Florals new stamp set here in front of me, and I will show you a couple of things what you can do, and just to get some ideas across. There is also the other stamp set, which is the palette swatches, and I will do that in the next video. Summer Florals are inspired by basically beautiful flowers that are blossoming in the summer. As you know, I have been enjoying drawing these kind of floral clusters in my sketchbook and doing all sorts of different compositions, and I decided to create a stamp set that will essentially help you to build your own cluster. Now notice that the large flower that you just saw isn't as large in this set, and that is because I wanted to get in as many elements as I could, so I have created smaller versions. But basically what you can do if you want a bigger one, you can stamp out the small one in like a nude color and then sort of line out a similar shape if you're not confident to do it yourself, and that way you will have this like as a helping guide to size it up. But I'll show you what to do today. So we have got different leaves, foliage, we've got flowers, we've got smaller elements to use as little fillers, we have got kind of berry inspired elements as well, some pots, and there is just so many things you can create. And I showed a couple of examples in the video before, but I'll just pull it out if there are some new people joining in today. So this is the kind of thing you can create, and obviously change up your color palette if you wish. So apart from the stamping set, acrylic block and distressing, by the way, I still have these available on my online shop. So I have my own online shop on my website, alyonacreates.com. However, I couldn't do a pre-order there, so I moved some of my inventory to Etsy, to my Etsy shop, Alyona Creates. And I think what I will do is I will add a few of these as well, so that when you are ordering these, you can also get the acrylic blocks to go with it in the same place, so you don't have to pay, you know, double shipping and all of that, shopping on two different sites. So I'm doing this pre-order on Etsy just for the pre-order, which is going to be about probably lasting about a week or so, and then I will move everything back to my website just to clarify things. And then going forward, I'm only selling on Etsy for Canada. Now that all of that is covered, let's start by creating a little cluster. So apart from watercolors, we'll need some brushes, some sort of mixing tray or whatever you have available to hand, water jar, and for water control I'm going to use just an old rag, but you can use napkin or again whatever else you can think of that's easy to get. Okay, I'm going to start with these flowers as our kind of main flower, and I'm using a nude ink, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here. So I'm gonna stamp this flower, and I'm going to use a fine liner 01. This one is drying a little bit on me, but essentially you can use any liner. I just realized this way I'm covering what I'm drawing, so hang on, I think the other angle is better for that. So what you can do is you can line it out, and then you can add more leaves to it to make it a bigger flower, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to be adding these kind of scallop shaped leaves, or petals rather, and I'm just going to go over and kind of add a few of them. There is no precision required. We're going to create a new flower from the stamped image, which is what I love doing. I love playing with these stamp sets and creating kind of my own versions of things. So here potentially we could have a begonia. And it's important to do this step because from now onwards we're going to be doing loads of other clusters. So I could do that to a smaller flower if I wanted to have just kind of like a couple of them nestling together. So what I can do now, which potentially you can't do with dark ink or black ink, if you're going straight in and starting with black ink, it just becomes a lot messier, is overlining. So watch, I'm gonna just wipe the area that I'm going to line over, and sometimes you still are going to line things over. And if you have black ink, you're going to have two lines crossing on top of each other, and it kind of makes no sense. However, with nude ink, you always have that ability to correct things. As you're lining out, you can just align one element to be in the foreground and the other one going behind it. So, keeping in mind this is a smaller flower, I'm just going to do a couple of them. So I hope you can see now how we're building the foreground and pushing things in the back, sliding them under. So this is something that is very easy to do with nude ink. You can still do it with black ink if you are seasoned inker, but I find it easier with the nude ink. It's more forgiving. Okay, and same thing here, a little petal, a few of them. Just scale everything down as you go and it will make sense. Okay, so these are our, let's call them begonia clusters, why not? From there I'm going to look at my leafage, and we have got a few things that I really love. Obviously you have seen this is like my main feature of the stamp set for leaves. I just love, they kind of remind me a little bit of the bamboo thin narrow leaves. Really gorgeous. So we're going to probably use these. Let's start with the bigger leaf element first, and then I'll use the smaller ones later on. So same thing, we're going to just ink it up. Just think now of the composition. So I think I'm going to create like sort of diagonal composition. Let's go with that. So there's one element stamped there, and now I can build on and change it up just by adding a few of these smaller elements right to this element. So what we're going to do is we're going to add one just here. There we go. You could also add it somewhere here. And just, you know, carry on as you wish. I'm going to go into the middle-sized element. So when I say middle-sized, we've got the bigger one, the middle, and the small from the same style of a leaf. And I'm just going to ink it up. And remember how we wanted to create this lovely kind of wispy diagonal composition. So, and now I'm going to go into the small one again and add a bit more detail and build it up just slightly. So I'll leave it at that, and then I will add a few more. Let's go into that lovely thin fine leaf. So here I'm just gonna think where I want it to go. Do I want it to go slightly more out? I could do that. Think where you want to have more shape. I think I'm gonna add here a little bit more. simply because otherwise those two elements are the same and they're pointing in the same direction. So I want visually to distract from that, and I could actually build it up here a little bit more like that. And one more just here. You may think it's becoming quite full, and again, you be you and do as much as you think works for you. So here I don't want to go as far, so I'm just gonna add maybe one more. That is it, but I feel like I want a little bit more on this side. There we go. So now it looks nice and kind of balanced to me. You'll see more once I will line things out. But so far this is what we have. So let's focus today with just leaves and the flowers. But you could go ahead and you could add obviously these little fillers that could add more to your illustration. You could build them behind the flower cluster, or you could just add them into small areas. In fact, let me just do with the couples. There's lovely little berries, and I'm going to just sprinkle them here and there, just a few. I find that it just, everything looks so much prettier with them in. I'm going to be just simply taking the same element and adding it into these different places. And I'll do 2 here. Because there are 22 elements, you can do so many different things, and that's the beauty about it. So I'm going to take my liner now and line everything out, and as I go I may want to connect some things if they haven't been stamped line to line, or I may want to overlap certain things, but basically you just take your pen, and this is, for me, it's like the most therapeutic thing. I just relax so much into it. I also like to draw line into my leaves. I find that it's easier for me to differentiate between leaves and pods and flower buds when I have the lines in. I don't do them in the finer detail because they're just lovely and thin, but I do it in the more kind of classic leaf shapes. So I'm gonna go over all of the images and then we'll do the watercolor part together. So this only took me a couple of minutes. It was really quick and relaxing to do. I forgot to mention, use a waterproof liner because you are going to go in with watercolors. So I've got a number of different sizes here of the brushes, but the elements are, some of them are fairly small, so I'm going to use a round 1. I also have a round 3 and a round 5. I don't think personally I'll need a 5, but I just have them ready just in case. So let's start with the fun part. So we're going to think of our flowers, generally is what I do. I think about the flowers being the kind of the main event, and then everything else is happening around it. So let's go with the slightly bigger brush, so the round 3. What kind of color palette do we want? Obviously now it's summer, so I go for nice and bright colors, but you can go for something more subtle and kind of adjust the color palette to your liking. I am going to go in with a pink. Going to use this pink as it is, nice and kind of vivid. Oh, I forgot to line out the centers of my flowers, so for that I use a really thick A05 liner, and make sure you don't go over it straight away because the ink needs to dry even if it's waterproof. It just needs to kind of be dry to touch, really. So let's say I give it a minute or so. Okay, so what I do, I tend to leave my center of the flowers quite light anyway. So I've got a rag to the side where you can't see it, but I'm going to basically control my water by just dabbing off some of it onto the rag. and I'm going to lift some of the watercolor from the center to create that lovely kind of highlight and ombre effect. Now I'm going to use the same pink, but just add a little bit of a kind of pastel opaque color to it, and it's going to be a different color over here. And then I'm going to continue, and I haven't decided what to do with the third one yet, so I'm just going to continue filling in these leaves and petals, sorry. Now try not to touch them all together because they will just blend in, and we want to maintain that separation if possible. Then I'm going to lift a little bit of this color because it's becoming one-dimensional as it's drying, and when I'm lifting I'm creating a little bit of a change there. Okay, now back into that lovely pink, and I'm going to build it up again and start adding it to the leaves. Now it's a very hot day today, so the watercolor is likely to dry quickly on me. I'm going to do 3 petals at a time, washing out my brush, dabbing the water off, and then just pulling towards the center of the flower, which means we're going to end up with a lighter version of the same color. And if it starts to blend in again, then again just lift it as you go. If you add too much water, you might get not enough color, so just go back in with your brush and dab it back into it. And just going to do exactly the same with all the other leaves. I'm going to carry on exactly the same with all the other petals. I'm going to do 3 at a time and finish it off. For the next flower, I want to mix up a peachy pink, so I'm gonna go back into the peach. This time I'm also going to add some orange. Back into the pink and back into the orange. So this is a good color. And where you lose contrast, like in these petals, you can just pop it in back in there. And that's it. So our flowers are done. Now let's move on to our greens. So just think of any kind of green that you want to use straight from the pan, or maybe mixing up a little bit as you go. That really doesn't matter much. So what I'm doing here is just adding the color in a few areas, no matter what the leaves are, like what kind of shape they have. But make sure you sprinkle it around this color, so you don't kind of use just a cluster of it in one spot. You want it to be in different places, I suppose. So let's do one more here. So that's probably enough of this color. And then let's add like a juicy green, or like a sap green actually. Do like to mix a bit of the sap green. I'm mixing the sap green with the same color that I used before, which was kind of like a mustardy green. Essentially I want to have 3 different colors in here. We also have berries, which I will focus on at the end. Okay, I think this is good. Now I'm going to go into the lightest green, and I think, let's see, I'm gonna use my chartreuse. This chartreuse is from my own handmade watercolors, which are also available both on Etsy and my website. It's part of a palette which I call the Ultimate Palette. So, as you can see, we now have this beautiful array of greens, and it's all kind of sort of spread around and looking cheerful. I'm going to repeat exactly the same on this cluster, and then we'll finish up with the berries. Now on to berries. Let's think about color value and the light value that you have. So predominantly we have the middle value, we have light value, and now we need something quite contrasting because we don't really have any darks. And for that reason, I'd go into a dark purple, which I have been enjoying purely for that purpose. I'm just looking for the, oh, here it is. So I've got here dioxide purple, which is the most intense purple that you can sort of source when it comes to watercolors. And it can look like black when it's just in its pure form. So we will make sure that we add a bit of water so we can see the color. And I'm going to go into a smaller brush as well. So what I like to do with berries, the same thing. I don't want to have a flat color, so I'm just going to lift a little bit at the tip to see that ombre, dark going into light. There we go. So we have lovely bit of contrast now, and I'll show you the end result. You can do some doodles over the top, you can create marks and lines and whatever you want to make it even more kind of personalized. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.